All right, welcome back to Foreign Gems. How you doing, Ola?
I am doing pretty good. It's been a long day, but this gives me life.
But a beautiful day.
It's beautiful. The sun is here again, finally.
Did you get outside?
Not today.
You didn't go outside today?
The most sun I saw was meeting you downstairs earlier.
Man, it was a gorgeous day. I actually ended up going to New West, which is kind of close to Vancouver for those unfamiliar. I was there just checking out kind of like the area. I went there to an event with a friend of mine and we kind of like looked around. It was gorgeous, man. Like this is what we moved here for.
Yeah.
It's like days like this, so it's really nice to be able to get out there and enjoy them. But good news for you is there's, I think, more of them in the horizon, so
Yeah,
That's
I'll,
gonna be
I'll
good.
try to enjoy them. One of our friends used to live there, Pablo, lived
Yeah.
in New West.
Yep.
I haven't been there much.
You haven't been there in a while.
No, I haven't explored much of Vancouver as I should.
There's some spots. White Rock is really nice too. And this summer we can do some exploring for sure.
Yeah.
But back to the subject at hand, why the people came. It's Foreign Gems. This is episode 7,
Something like that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting up there. So I'm really happy. We now have the episodes actually out. So
Yeah.
a lot of the ones we were recording before, they were just like a kind of backlogged, you know. But Foreign Gems is out now and people are listening to it and
Yeah,
giving
we're
us
starting
feedback,
to get feedback.
which is really exciting. And one of the things people are really liking about Foreign Gems is how actionable some of the topics that we talk about are. And I'm excited to talk about this one because I think it's very actionable and very useful for people, especially if they're new to any country. It's not really Canada specific in any way.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. Do you want to introduce the topic?
Yeah, the topic for today is side hustles.
Yeah.
So, for context, I mentioned to Mark last night
Yeah.
that we should talk about side hustles today.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that there are quite some ideas that I've been thinking of that I won't have time to get to.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to share with people.
Yeah.
And Mark then brought the perspective of, there are things that people can do today as well,
Yeah.
that are not necessarily complicated ideas.
Yeah.
So we thought we should talk about that as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess we should give a background into why immigrants
Yeah.
tends to have a lot of side hustles in the
Yeah.
first place.
Yeah, actually, I think before we even get into it, you should share that perspective you shared with me before we started recording about the image of immigrants in a particular country and how that can affect why they might feel that they need to even have a side hustle in the first place. Do you want to share that with them?
Yeah, every time you see a lot of immigrants, you tend to think, you tend to see immigrants as hard workers.
Yeah.
And in some places you see like a doctor, but they will have like some side hustle working at a corner store.
Yep.
And it makes it look like immigrants they don't have a lot of potential or they're not that intelligent.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. It's just due to the nature of being an immigrant.
Yep.
You left your home nation
Yep.
for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
The type of person that would leave their home nation are they're go-getters.
Yeah.
They're people that like to chase and improve themselves.
Yeah.
So that's one part. It's just your nature.
Yep.
You can't sit still. You have to be doing something.
Yeah.
The other part of it is also the opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the opportunity to, most of the time, leave a worse situation to a place where there's so many options.
Yeah.
And now, you don't want to rest.
Yeah. You have that energy to do
You have that energy.
whatever it takes.
Finally, you can do things that you've been dreaming to do.
Yeah.
When I was coming to Canada, the letter I wrote to Memorial University, which was the university I went to, was I didn't even know what I was doing then. I was like 16 or so when I wrote the letter.
Yeah.
But what I wrote to them was, I have a lot of ambition and goals,
Yeah.
and I don't think I'm in the country to achieve it, and I want to be in an environment that supports that.
Yeah.
That was what I wrote.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say I understand fully what I was saying,
Yeah.
but the older I am now, the more I'm like, that's...
what you were talking about at the time.
Yeah, and now that I'm here and I have all these opportunities, I just can't be lazy.
Yep.
I have to take advantage.
Yeah.
Then responsibilities as well.
I was gonna say there's a third one there.
Yeah.
There's necessity.
The necessity, I call it the immigrant tax.
Yeah.
In this part of the world, we're in North America, you tend to have student loans.
Yeah.
You go to school, you get student loan, but then you have to pay it off. But
Yep.
there's an end, right? You pay it off eventually.
Yep.
As an immigrant, you don't start paying back your loan.
No,
They're
no,
usually
no.
people that supported you to get to wherever you are in the first place.
Yeah.
And even if they don't, you just have that sense of responsibility to help other people that don't have the opportunities that you have.
That's true.
And yeah, that's the immigrant tax you have to keep paying as long as you're
Yeah.
successful.
Yeah, I remember that being something that I thought about quite a bit when I was going through school as well, because there was a lot of us mixed bag. So some of us were international students, some of us were like students from other provinces. So like we were staying in residence like early on, and then eventually, you know, we would move out together in groups or whatever. But then there was also like the other half of like a typical classroom, which would be people who were from St. John's specifically. And you could tell there was a bit of a difference in lifestyles for both. Whereas people who like grew up in St. John's, there's a good chance they can still live at home, for example. So that takes care of a big expense, which would be your rent once you've moved out, for example.
Right.
So like that's not like putting as much pressure on you to
Right.
do the side hustle kind of side thing. And you could always see there's a bit of a divide where some people like, you know, I'm just gonna go home and I'm gonna study, for example. But some people are finishing class and they've got to go do like a part-time job, for example, and like it makes for a different university experience.
Yeah.
But I think it teaches you very early on like how to manage your time and your resources incredibly well. Like I didn't know much about budgeting until I had to start paying rent and make sure that there's enough money for rent at the end of the month.
Wow.
And that's actually was like the first time it all clicked that, you know, money is really, really important. Like I knew, of course, because I'd spent it before and all of this. I knew it was important, but I didn't realize how much it enables somebody or disables somebody depending on how they treat it. And side hustles became really attractive to me when I realized, you know, you've got a little bit of a pocket of time here, a pocket of time there. You could multiply that time and make it like another resource for you, essentially, to make sure you keep going throughout the whole process of going through school. So like you've got a part of you that's like wanting to learn and focus and do all of this thing, and then another part of you is like, I need to sustain. So side hustles became something that like was like top of mind. Money became top of mind, and I would say it was like the kick-starting point for my interest in personal finance in general.
That's interesting. For me, I've always budgeted, but I would like save money all year to buy like an expensive phone or something. Like it wasn't like, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't budgeting to save. I wouldn't say I was money savvy, but I always knew that sense of sacrifice in a way. And it also has to do with my childhood. So which is a different subject entirely. But what I would say though, like being an immigrant, what it allowed me to do was being more disciplined about respecting money. So growing up, I was always resourceful. I created things, I would do things, but I would never charge for it. People would even sometimes try to pay me for things. I would just say, oh, I don't care too much about money. And so my creativity was more of, you know, just pranks and fun. It wasn't until, you know, I had to pay my own rent. There was pressure for money that I had to be very clever about
what it is you were doing.
I had to find ways to actually make money.
And what would you say was like your first side hustle?
This one is very funny. My first side hustle was, when I came into Canada, I still had money. So I wanted to buy something for my PSP. I can't even remember exactly what it was.
For your what?
PSP, which video game at the time.
Man, we should talk about that at some point as well.
Oh yeah, video games.
PS Vita.
Oh yeah, Vita came out eventually.
Yeah. Go on. Anyways, so sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no worries. I wanted to buy a used something, so people introduced me to Kijiji, which is it's like the Canadian version of Craigslist.
Which is funny because Kijiji means village.
In what
Swahili.
language? Oh, Swahili.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know who the creator of Kijiji is, but they were channeling some foreign energies there, man.
So there you go.
And and that's what it is. It's like a community marketplace.
It is. Yeah. I found the site and I was like, oh, this is cool. People can actually do this. You can, you know, buy anything you want. So that was the first insight. Then I was going through university, and I was like at the university center, and I used to see this pile of books like in a little corner that no one goes into. Like it had no foot traffic, but for some reason that's where they put the recycled books.
Yep.
So I was trying to buy a textbook for my computer science class at the time, and textbook was like $180 or something.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to pay that, so I just said, "Oh, let me go check in this recycled book," and I found the book that I needed.
Yeah.
And it was just there, free. But I didn't want to steal because I'm in a new country.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to steal generally, but in a new country, I have to be extra careful.
Especially now.
Yeah. So I asked, I took the book to the library and said, "Hey, this is where I found the book. What do you think?" And then they told me like, "Oh yeah, this it's free. You're meant to take it." I was like, "I can take any quantity I want." Yeah. They're like, "Yeah, it's all anyone can take whatever they want." I was like, "Oh, this is interesting."
Yeah.
So I took the book. Then I went home and I checked the same book online, and I saw that there was like 20 people that posted that they wanted the book.
Yeah.
They were willing to pay $120.
Yeah.
I was like, this is wild.
Yeah.
So the next day I went back there, picked up 2 copies, went home, posted it online, and I got offers. Yeah. So I started doing that. I would like go home on my way from class. I'll pack as many as I could.
Yep.
I would then post it online. I became like a book merchant.
Yeah. Yep.
But that was my first side also.
That was the first one. That's a very relatable story because funny enough, when my dad went to university in India.
Oh,
that's where he did his, that's where he did his schooling, which is really wild. I've never even been to India. But I hear beautiful things. A lot of people have been there who are my friends, and they say it's like an amazing. But he went up north in India, and to help pay for his studies, he was also selling books. That's how he did it. And he was selling enough books that it could cover like tuition costs and living expenses at one point. So I think this is wired into him in some way. But it's funny that was your choice as well. You saw the opportunity there, the gap. Of course, in university settings, like book expenses are incredibly expensive. Like they're difficult to overcome. I remember when I first got to university at Memorial, I saw the list of books that I had to get, and it was equivalent to like a third of what I was paying for res, and that was just for like one semester. Wow. is what I needed for like all of the books. And the thing is, you use those books, especially early on, the one time. Like it's not a textbook that you refer to again many times, because you start to specialize later on. Maybe the subject that you bought the book for is not something that you continue further down on. Usually it's like introduction to a particular subject matter, so over time you outgrow it as well. Yeah. It's a big expense, and there was a big secondary market for used textbooks. I know in my class we started to like get the textbooks like online, or like somebody would have the textbook downloaded from like a previous year or something, like as a PDF, and share it all in like a big drive. I started doing that too, Yeah, and that helped us a lot, honestly. Like the money we saved going through school by sharing resources was huge. That's an interesting and relatable story you just heard. For me, I think my first side hustle was honestly something probably very relatable to most people who went to university, which was like a part-time job at a coffee shop. I wouldn't even know if you could call it a side hustle because I was employed at that point. But I remember that being a bit of a turning point for me because I did co-op as part of university. So my first year it was full-time academic, but my second year it started to alternate. So I would do 1 term academic, 1 term work term. And in the work term, my entire objective was just to save as much money as possible so that the next time was academic, I would have enough to carry me through those 4 months or so. And then it was back to work again. But then my last semester, I had finished pretty much all of the courses that I needed to do, all of the electives and whatnot. So instead of having a full course load of 5 courses, I only had 3. And so I have some extra time, like what should I do with this? And that's kind of relates to the point I was making earlier, is like I have this resource, instead of kind of just chilling with my friends or something like that, why don't I go and make life easier for me in the future by having just like a little bit of income. And of course coffee shops also tip really well, so I recommend that a lot.
Working at a coffee shop?
Yeah, because of the tips. honestly. I only spent money from the tips, and everything that was coming in as a check, I could just kind of
What
like
coffee
hold
shop
on
did
to.
you work at?
I worked at Jumping Bean. Shout out Jumping Bean.
Yes, that was like what do you call it? A hipster one. Like
Kind
it
of.
was kind of bougie.
They had a Jumping Bean at the library. Remember that?
Oh yeah, they did.
Yeah, but like they also have like yeah, it's I wouldn't say as far as coffee shops go, there's levels to
There was
this.
one at the UC as well. What was it?
No, that was a different one.
What's that one called?
I can't remember what that one was called, but that's a
Anyways,
different one. I remember because I used to go there a lot because the engineering building was like right next to it.
Right.
Yeah, I would spend a lot of time there. But in terms of like the spectrum of like super like bougie, it was maybe midway to bougie is what I would say in the spectrum. The reason being like this location was close to a residential area where there was a lot of older people. And the good thing about older people is they love foreigners. They were always super interested in my story. And I stood out for obvious reasons, you know? So they were always questioning, always asking, always tipping a lot. Like I became friends with a lot of like older middle-aged women. It was really interesting. But that was the first time where I was like, okay, I should use my time efficiently. Whereas before in schools, like whenever I was done either studying or being in class, I was like, okay, this is my time. Let me kind of do whatever I want with this time. But then as I was getting older, getting later into my studying, how I used my time started to take up like more brain space. And like I was bothered when I wasn't like doing something productive, whether it was like studying or, you know, actually working or doing something like that. So in terms of like actionable advice for anybody who is starting out at university and they find that, you know, okay, I'm taking like a lighter course load this academic semester or whatever, it's not a bad idea to get yourself involved in like an idea like that, like either a side hustle that you're running yourself like all I was doing, or get a part-time job or something like that. It'll teach you time management skills. It'll teach you, like, once you start making your own money, it's more personal to you how you spend it. So it teaches you like your like personal budgeting and things like that. That little experience as well, just like working hard for money. Because in the co-ops, I was like, I'm in an office. It's like, it's very chill. It's more of a learning environment than a full work environment. But at the coffee shop, I am a worker, so I need to do my job well in order for it to be a good partner to everybody else who I'm working with, but as well obviously give like a good experience to the customer. And it just taught me so much about like customer and business relationships. I've seen the wildest things happen. But yeah. And now that I'm saying the story out loud, I just realized that I'm completely lying, by the way. Coffee shop was not my first gig. My first gig was Dairy Queen.
Oh, okay.
Did you ever work at a fast food place?
I worked at a coffee shop as well.
You worked at a coffee shop?
I managed the Tim Hortons for 4 years.
So you know the situation.
But
where,
our
like,
tip situation was not as good as yours. That's why I said yours was bougie.
So in the Tim Hortons, is on the spectrum, it's probably closer to the other end.
No, ours was
it's like fast food,
the
right?
extreme, like cheapest.
Yeah, you're not gonna get a lot of tips. I see some of their cups sometimes when I go to a Tim Horton. I see like a couple coins.
Oh yeah,
and
it looks sad.
This is not.
I even
right.
tried so much tricks. I even like put like the seed in, you know, like because I did. I also worked as a banquet staff.
Okay.
And sometimes in
like
banquet
for events.
Yeah, for events. Yep. That was my first real full-time job. Not full-time. My first real part-time job.
Yep.
So the side hustle was a side hustle, but the one where I was actually getting paycheck was it was a banquet staff.
Yeah.
And every now and then you'd be at the bar.
Yeah.
And then I noticed when you tip the jar, like yourself.
Yeah.
You tend to get more because people already see that there's already money in there.
Yeah,
so,
that's interesting.
A pro
tip. Yeah. That's a good tip actually for everybody, which is pun intended.
Tip yourself. Yeah.
A tip for getting tips.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, like I was mentioning earlier, I think it's a good idea to do that, to spend any extra time that you have. Of course, if you need to recharge, like do that. Like manage your time wisely so that you can perform the best that you can with the opportunity given to you, which is primarily school. But if you find yourself, you know, I've got a little bit of a lighter load, spend that time trying to earn in some way, trying to get out there in the community and provide value in some way. Because I think it teaches you a lot, and you'll just carry that lesson throughout.
Yeah, I totally agree. But yeah, Dairy Queen.
Yeah.
What's any How did that happen? What happened?
It was typical. So it was actually my first summer that I spent in Canada. So after first year, I had to get an open work permit so I could work a little bit in the summertime just to sustain myself.
Right.
Because this is before co-op, mind you. Co-op started in the second year, so I hadn't earned like $1. And I was very fortunate to have my parents support me at the beginning of my schooling. So like my first year was covered through scholarships and through my parents. And then, but the summer was just going to be me, essentially.
Yeah.
And I needed to make rent. I was subletting for one of my friends who I'd met in residence, and they were going to move out. But I was looking for jobs around my house, essentially. So I printed out a resume for the first time, had like 20 copies of this resume in a backpack, and me and my friend just kind of walked around the neighborhood and just dropped them off at interesting places. And I remember being like a fan of Dairy Queen.
Yeah. Double Whopper.
Yeah, I wanted to go there and get like, the burgers. I liked the blizzards that they had there. But, and there was one at school as well, so I was familiar with the brand. But like...
Dairy Queen didn't do Double Whopper.
That's Burger King.
Yeah, Dairy Queen. There's one that we used to get all the time. Damn it, I can't remember. I haven't had Dairy Queen for like
there's like
10 years now.
There's like a flamethrower.
Flamethrower, there we go.
Yeah,
Flamethrower.
the spicy one.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, and so I was familiar. I liked the food. I was like, oh, maybe it'd be fun to work here. I was so wrong. Like fast food, especially Dairy Queen in the summertime.
Burger smelling like grease.
The summertime, there were so many people. Like sometimes a rush would come in of like 40 kids. I remember one time they did a football tournament, and that's soccer for our American friends. They did a football tournament, and it was like kids from all over the island. They came in. There were like maybe 8 or 9, and hundreds of kids. And after their games, they brought all of them to Dairy Queen. There was a lineup like outside around the Dairy Queen all the way, and just order after order of ice cream. I was pumping out so much. I've never been so tired in my life. It's just pumping out ice cream for these kids. And yeah, I remember after kind of having some weird situations kind of happen. I don't want to shout anybody out, like pick on anybody specifically, but we had some weird situation happen with like our manager. And he was so strict about such random, arbitrary things like
Wow.
the number of scoops of peanuts that you put in the ice cream and things like that. I remember he was watching me one time, and I was talking to this customer, and I liked them, so I was like, I'm gonna give you a little extra scoop of pecans. And he saw me, and I didn't even do the flip. You're supposed to do a flip after.
Yeah.
I didn't do that. I just handed it to them because I was like, this is fully loaded. I'm not flipping. So I give it to them, and they're obviously very happy, and they leave. I was like, come to my office. So I went over to his office. Just, did I see you give that person 4 scoops of pecans? I was like, maybe. Like, were you watching the whole time? He's like, listen, we run a very tight business here. Like, if you're giving people extra scoops of pecans, like, we're losing money on the back end. And I mean, technically he's right. Yeah. But at the same time, I'm thinking, if I give these people a good experience, you will get money in the end. Back, they come back, and that's how you get regulars. And I started to see some people are just habitual.
Right.
But some people would have just like a good experience, not necessarily just with me, but like with my coworkers as well. And then you would see them again next week and be like, hey, they're happy to see you and things like that. I felt that was important as well. But I couldn't really argue that point with him because he's like, I've been running this Dairy Queen for, he like inherited it from his parents and stuff like that. But anyhow, I very quickly got out of there, and it wasn't like I actually enjoyed working with the customers, but management was my biggest issue at the time. Yeah. And that's when I started to get the inkling, like, I don't know that I like having like a boss. That was the first time I was like, I disagree with this person, but I have no way of communicating this with them. Like, it's a one-way street with someone like that, right? So pick your bosses wisely. That is the moral of that story. But that was actually my first kind of earning experience, I guess, in Canada.
No, my first one was the place was called Chatwells. Now they're a global corporation. I can't remember their name now, but it will come back to me later on. But they are the biggest, probably like supplier of like food services and products and everything you can name now. Yeah. I don't know. For some reason, the manager just liked me, and
Super
People
important.
used to like beg for shifts. They used to like want, you know, her to book them.
Yeah.
For some reason, she always books me for this shift at the business building.
Yeah.
It was only me there. I was like the top building, I think 6th floor, whatever it was.
Yeah.
I was just the only one there. It was quiet. It was like this private event that the like Mon president and everyone used to like have.
Yeah.
It was so chilled. So that's why I used to like study.
Yeah.
So I would be there, set up,
Yeah.
then bring out my books, be doing my assignments. People come in, they sit down. I'm there, just doing my assignment. It was the chillest thing ever.
Yeah.
I thought this was like passive income. Yeah. And that was my idea of passive income at the time.
You're like there, but are you really doing?
Yeah. At the time, you know, now I know what true passive income is. But at the time, I thought, oh, this is passive income. I'm getting paid just to hang out and do my assignments.
Yeah.
Like this is amazing. Then at the end of the day, I take free food home. You know, because we have to get rid of the food.
Yep.
The pop, whatever we use for the events, we have to get rid of it because it's already budgeted and we don't have the storage for it. Yeah. So I used to have like so much pop at home, like beverages.
Just keep it in.
My fridge was always, I had to like give away to friends all the time. So it was amazing for a student. That was a good scenario. Yeah. Then I moved to Thames. I started working at Thames, and it was the same thing. Yeah. Thames is Tim Hortons for those that are not in Canada. Yeah. So I was working there, and free food. I was getting free food all the time. Well, yeah, the same thing. Yeah. Things we want to throw away.
That's also a valid point that you bring up, which is the perks of the place that you might be able to work.
That's very important as a student. Always look at
the food,
the perks,
the food was so clutch. When I was working at the coffee shop, so clutch to be able to just like make a sandwich for myself. So that's my lunch covered. That means I'm not spending, you know, on that at the very least. So that was super useful at the end of the shift. Maybe you take a little something. At the coffee shop, I remember I used to have breakfast there essentially pretty much every time. Usually wherever you work, you get some sort of perk or discount for the items in the store. So the food industry can be a good one for you to get into. But I actually wanted to get your opinion on what you would recommend for people to do in a situation like that. Say you're just like, okay, so I'm now a student at this university. I find myself with some extra time. What would you advise? Like, say, what would you advise yourself back in the day? Would you follow the same path, or would you tell them to like do something slightly different?
That's such a great question. It's so hard to answer that in sense of, I know what I know now. Yeah. And you know the path or the whole map is so clear to me. Yeah. But at the time it wasn't. Yeah. So now the advice I would give myself would be so different from what if I told someone to do what I did. Yeah. But what I did then, I can talk from my perspective, is I just followed the path of least resistance. Yeah. You know, I just went with the things I was already good at. Yeah. I was interested in music. I didn't know how to DJ. Yeah. But I was a quick learner with softwares. Yeah. So, and in Newfoundland, you know, it wasn't the most exciting place at the time. Yeah. So one of the few things people do is go clubbing. Yeah. And I wasn't really into clubbing. I didn't drink. Yeah. So but I still wanted to be around people. Yep. So I picked up DJing. Yeah. And so that was one thing I did at the time. I was always DJing. Mm-hmm. The first time I wanted to cut my hair, I went to the salon or whatever, barbershop. Yep. Well, there wasn't even a barbershop at the time. Yeah. Maybe it just wasn't close to where I lived. It was a salon. So there was this lady, she cut my hair. It was terrible. And I paid $30. Yeah. And, you know, coming from Nigeria at the time, it was like, what the hell? Yeah. Like that was too much.
This is expensive.
Yeah. And this was 2008, which means like $30 in 2008 compared to now is even like, let's just say it's $50. Which is,
it's a lot.
I was like, this is terrible. But on my way home, I had to buy some, you know, toothpaste and all this stuff. Yeah. And then at Shoppers, I noticed that the clippers were $25. Yeah. So then I was like, okay, I didn't think too much. I just bought the clippers because if not for anything, at least when I go to the salon, I have my own clippers just to be safe.
Which my parents always recommended, by the way.
Yeah, always have your own clippers. Yeah. But yeah, so I took the clippers and went home. Like a few days later, my hair used to grow really fast. Yeah. Not like right now that it's all fully shaved. Yeah. At the time, it used to grow really fast. Yeah. And yeah, then I started cutting my own hair.
Yeah.
And it was bad, but I had roommates who could cut hair. So
Yeah.
anytime I messed up, like they would
They
just
could just
help
help
me
you
fix
out a
it.
little bit, yeah.
And that's what I started doing. Before you knew it, I was cutting my own hair. And I've been in Canada 15 years.
Yeah.
Did I tell you like that? The only time I've ever paid to cut my hair was that first time.
That one time.
Yeah.
Since then, you're like, nope.
I thought myself out too.
Yeah.
And then people started asking me to cut their own hair. So that became a side hustle for me.
There you go.
I started cutting
Now
people's
you're
hair and
cutting some
getting paid.
That's a really good one, honestly. I had a couple friends do the same thing.
Yeah.
And I really liked it, and I appreciated also being able to support them in a way.
Oh yeah, if you can cut hair, whew.
You should do it. Like, your friends will love you for it.
Yep.
And they'll pay you for it because it's an important service, and it's really expensive service. So
Yeah.
like, I think that's a really good side hustle, is being like, if you can learn to cut hair, and I think it's way easier to cut somebody else's hair than it is to cut your own hair. So if you can manage to make your hair kind of look kind of good, then you're likely gonna be able to make someone else's hair look good.
For anyone that doesn't know, the trick to cutting your own hair, you need 2 mirrors.
Yeah.
So you need a small mirror that you hold,
Yep.
and then you have the main mirror, and
Yeah, that's what I was.
you'll figure it out.
That's what I was doing during COVID.
Oh,
Yeah, I gave myself like, okay, one side was a good fade, the other side wasn't.
yeah.
that
So you don't
great.
want to start doing complicated stuff. When I needed to do, I did give myself mohawk though.
Yeah.
I had to use like a tape, and yeah, it was.
Man, that's so funny, man. One time
Yeah.
I also did the same thing. I thought I could give myself like a nice Mr. T look
Oh.
in res, and I made myself look so horrible, man. And the next day I had to go just find somebody who knew what they were doing to help me out with it. Oh, man. Something that came to mind while you were telling that story, you know, like the cutting hair, accent side hustle, recommend if you can do that. But something that came in mind as well is when you're going to university at first, at least this is our experience with Canada, is you don't necessarily get an open work permit, which can limit you in a way. But what you do get is a closed work permit. And what that does is it opens up the opportunity to work at the university.
Yeah.
So at Memorial, there was almost like a job board of different positions that you could work at. Maybe I think some of them were like the library. One of them was the Works, the gym that was at Memorial. You could work there. There was like IT support for some, like, you know, people would come in with their issues.
Career
like
development.
There was career development. There was a lot of different avenues that you could get your foot in the door, and I think it was capped. I think you could only work so many hours throughout the semester, and it definitely doesn't add up to like a full week, like a full-time job or anything. Maybe barely even a part-time job. But it's a good way to get your foot in the door and also not require the open work permit in order to do it.
Right.
So I'm not sure if this is the case for all universities. Like, if you're in university and you're listening right now, check with like your local university, make sure that this is possible. But that's a nice little way as well to have like a little bit of extra income while you're trying to go through your studies.
Yeah, another one that I personally did was hosting events.
Okay.
So clubs, I didn't know that at the time, but I was just lucky. I worked. I'm one of my friends that he hosted events.
Yeah.
So I became like his little intern.
Yeah.
So I would help him distribute flyers in school.
Yeah.
And he would give me a portion of whatever tickets I sold.
Amazing.
So that was one of the side hustles, and it was very easy. I was just be in class,
Yeah.
just talk to my classmates. Hey, what are you up to this weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, you got no plans? Oh, cool. I have this event.
Are you interested?
And then yeah, so I ended up becoming very popular in Res, even though I didn't live in Res.
Yeah.
I was always in Res.
Yeah.
I was the Res kid, and people didn't even know that I didn't live in Res because I was there so much, because just to promote events. Then eventually, I then learned that, you know, to do this event, you don't have to even pay the clubs.
Yeah.
Because the clubs, they have the venue.
Yeah.
They make their money on the back end
But
of
the
the drinks.
facts with you being there.
You're like their marketer. They just want you to bring in
People there.
people. So they give you the free venue. Did you even know that?
I did not know that.
Now you know.
That is a fun fact
Yeah.
and useful information.
They give you the venue and just promote it, and as long as you can fill in, and you get to keep every
Like
the
ticket sale.
ticket. Not every club, but I would say like 90% of the club. You keep whatever you had to get, because you make like $5 or whatever.
Yeah, it's nothing
per
crazy.
person.
Yeah.
They make $100
Yeah.
per person.
Yeah.
So
They're happy.
If they're fair,
Yeah.
they let you keep all that get. So it was great. That was another way
Yeah.
to make you. like one of the events I did, I made $1,500, and I didn't have to spend more than, I spent like $200, and that was because I had to like rent the DJ equipment, like fog lights.
Did you DJ
smoke
for it?
Machine? Yeah. I DJ'd for it too. So I guess you would have to pay DJ if you can't DJ.
If you can't
DJ. I was my own promoter, my own DJ. And I made quite some money without spending so much money upfront.
So, man, that's a good idea.
Yeah, so just use what you can. I had friends female who can braid hair.
Yeah.
That's something you can do. If you're good at
nice
cooking.
That's a good one.
Yeah, you can cook for people.
So I was thinking that one as well, because as we go through this, I'm like thinking back and remembering some of the things that I've seen other people do as well, and that was a really good one. So at my university, there was more and more Africans going there, and a common pain point for that group was missing food from back home, and there wasn't that many options for it. There was some options for food that were restaurants, but you don't always want to pay restaurant prices as well for that food as a student. And one of my friends, they started just like a catering service where you would send in an order via WhatsApp and just say, this is like the food that I want. Like they had like a board of like the different types of food, what the menu was. It'd be like 2 or 3 items, nothing crazy. And then you could just message that person and let them know what it is you're looking for, and then you could go and like pick it up. And it would come in like a nice little styrofoam thing. The meals were only like $10, something like that, but you got like a decent amount of food. That was such a good side hustle. So I'm glad you mentioned like cooking. I think that's definitely a viable option if it's something that you are passionate about and can spend time on.
Yeah. Another thing I would say, anyone coming, like you asked me, you said, what would you advise someone? Yeah. If I were to advise myself before I left Nigeria and anyone living their own country, learn a skilled trade before you leave. These things are very valuable in this society, but they're so expensive to get into and pay for. But back home in Nigeria anyways, these things are so easy to learn. Like you can be a mechanic easily, you can be a tailor, you can be a hairdresser, and these are skills that they're looked down upon from your home. But when you come here,
they're needed.
They're needed. You make so much money. So instead of doing all these jobs that we just mentioned, you come right off from the boat and you're making so much money.
Now you're an entrepreneur.
Yeah, you're an entrepreneur and you're making so much money. You can even go work at a shop and
you're making
more money.
Yeah.
And even right now, like a cobbler, people that fix shoes. Back home, that's a terrible job. But now, in the days of the internet now, where you can reach whatever audience. Actually, now that I'm mentioning it, this goes into the next segment. We are running over the time for
part one.
For part one. So this is a multiple parts episode, as I mentioned earlier on, because I had an idea and then Mark had an idea, and we decided why not just make it a double part. So the first part is, the common immigrant side hustles that people can do and that we've done. And there's a lot more, many ideas that I tried. I drove taxi as well. Did you ever do that?
No, I did not.
A lot of people that I know did that.
And now it's even more accessible than
Uber.
Before for most people. So in Newfoundland specifically, I don't think there is Uber.
Well, you still have to kind of buy a car too.
Yeah, okay, it's a little bit harder to get
the taxi.
into that.
You use someone else's car.
Yeah. That's true. That's a good point.
You just split the money 50-50. So that was something I did as well. iPad, I had my iPad. I downloaded all my PDF of my textbooks. I was always studying in between, right? So
between fairs,
I would say that was the points where I grew the most, like personal development. I read all kinds of books that you can read. Because the job was so frustrating. So you're like, on one hand, you're still making money, but you're frustrated. And then it pushes you drive to learn. And so I was reading all kinds of books, just developing myself. It didn't seem like they made sense at the time, but over time it proved to be the right move. So that's something I would recommend to someone as well. If you like to read, if you like to drive, do a taxi. But the next segments, which we'll go into, well, actually, no. But we'll see you in the next segments. Now it's time for you to hear the music and give us your feedback on what you think. Give us ideas of.
Tell us.
Actually, Mark, take us out.
Tell us what you've seen as well. So these are just some of the ideas that we saw and experienced and attempted. But obviously, there's so much more that could be done as well, and we haven't seen everything. So if you have some ideas as well, and you want to help out somebody who might be listening to this, who's thinking of some ideas for some side income a little bit, please share them. It'll be really helpful for them as well to know that there's ways for them to help supplement their cost of living while they're also pursuing their studies. But we'll call it the end of part 1 here.
Yeah.
And we'll see you in the second part. We're going to talk a little bit more about scalable ideas. So ideas you can maybe start while you're doing your studies at the same time, but then they have the potential to become your full-time gig in a way.
Yeah.
Something that you can actually make huge as long as you put in the time and effort into that. So thank you all for listening to this episode, and we'll see you in the second part.
Sounds good. I'm for the break.